Good evening, everyone. And welcome to Christchurch for our hustings. It's great that so many people are here. You will be pleased to know we put the air conditioning on a warm, muggy night like this. We need a little bit of cool air going around, so we've been able to turn it on. We'll be starting very shortly. Just a couple of things. It's great there's so many people here. If you've got empty chairs in the middle of the road, could I ask you kind of to shuffle along, just so we've got empty chairs at the end, so any latecomers can get them. That would be really helpful. Thank you. It will save people having to do it later and interrupting things. A couple of things that you need to know. The toilets. You will need the toilets. We're going to be here for a little while. There are toilets through those double doors there, right opposite you, and those double doors there and to the right. And just feel free to use them. We will finish before 9:30. We said 9 o'clock, but we've had so many questions that we want to try and get as many of them as possible. And I'll at some point decide where we kind of finish. We had well over 40 questions. That's a couple of evenings worth. We've written them down to 17, and perhaps even that is too many. So depending on how things go, we may even do less than that. What we did with the questions that people submitted is that we have shortened some of the questions, because some of them were essays. Sorry. And also we combined some that were on similar themes. So hopefully if you've submitted a question, you might recognise something of your question in those that I'll bring tonight. After each candidate has responded to the question, at least initially, and again this will depend on time, we will take 1 or 2 questions from the floor on that theme. Okay? So we'll have mics going around, and so everyone can hear what your question is. If it looks like that's going to take too long, then I'll probably stop that as we go along. Is that all right? Because obviously we want to get through as many of the questions as possible. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question, and if there is a question from the floor, they will only have 1 minute to respond to that question. And in a moment, they're going to introduce themselves, say something about themselves within 2 minutes. And all I ask is that tonight we try and be as civil as possible. It's Southport, for goodness sake, you know? I've only been here for, I should introduce myself, shouldn't I? I'm Stephen Gans, I'm the vicar here, and I've been here for 3 months. I've come from Liverpool, and so I'm enjoying Southport life. And this is the first day it's rained since I've been here. Honest. Yeah. So it is important that we are civil, because also you are all now worldwide, because it's getting streamed tonight. Our beautiful assistant over there, Sonia, is filming it, and it is streamed over on our website, and you can encourage people, text them now to pick it up online. Mention things, please turn them on to silent. So if you don't hear them, get it out now, turn it on to silent. Before we really start, what I would like us to do is just for a moment to stand and keep a moment of silence in remembrance of those who died in London over the weekend. So I'd ask you to stand for a moment. The events of the weekend remind us of how important politics is. And for a moment, just for 1 minute, let's just be quiet. And I'll finish that moment with a prayer. Father, we remember before you all those who lost their lives over the weekend. We pray, Lord, that you would comfort their families, that you would strengthen them in this difficult time. We pray that we'd be with those who are still injured, especially those who are still critically injured. But we pray for all those, both innocent bystanders, the police, the ambulance, who are all involved in that traumatic incident, that you would be close to them. Surround them with your love, we pray. In Jesus' name. Please be seated.
Immersed in doing community work. I'm involved in all sorts of voluntary projects throughout the town. I could name them, but you'd probably get bored and think that I'm showing off, but I'm not really. As I say, I stand for UKIP. UKIP came into being around about 1997 for the primary reason of getting our country out of the European Union. Now, for a small party, we've punched well above our weight. In fact, we aren't doing bad at all, are we, up until now? But now I feel that we've come up against a stumbling block in Theresa May. I sincerely hope that I'm wrong, but I fear that she won't deliver the Brexit that she apparently likes to convey to people that she will when she says Brexit means Brexit. I think that will be a very watered down Brexit. But obviously this is something that we'll come on to later. But the purpose of my party, as I say, the main purpose, the primary purpose, was to get us out of the European Union. And in that respect, we've been heading in the right direction so far. So in the 20 years our party has existed, we're doing quite well.
Thank you, Craig.
Good evening. My name is Sue Maguire and I'm standing for the Liberal Democrats. I was born in Southport and I'm proud to call myself a sandgrounder through and through. In fact, after the war, my father was once a shrimper in Marshside. I live in Southport and I've been a local councillor in Southport since 2006, which means I'm aware of the issues affecting residents and affecting our town. And I believe that this makes me the best candidate to represent Southport. But I wasn't always a politician. I was a working mum with 2 small children. And it was the lack of a drop curb that got me interested in local politics initially. And it started me asking questions about how decisions were made and, more importantly, who made them. So I stood as a councillor because I wanted to make a difference to my local community. Now, 11 years later, I have a track record as a local campaigner and a community activist. As co-founder of Rubbish Friends in 2012, I've worked alongside volunteers to clear up spots across Southport, and I'm proud to say we've collected a staggering 1,000 bags of rubbish. I am campaigning with John Pugh for the NHS and for Southport Hospital. I'm working alongside my colleague Councillor Pat Keith. I'm working with local businesses, with GPs and with local chemists to make Southport a dementia-friendly town. Improving the standard of care for people within our communities is a key priority for me, and that's why I was so angry when Theresa May announced plans for a dementia tax, a cruel and callous attack on the most vulnerable in our society. Southport deserves an MP, a local MP, who is passionate, who is driven and who is committed to our town. I have a record as having a strong voice for Southport locally, and I will be an even stronger voice for Southport in Westminster. I would be honoured and privileged if you gave me your support on June the 8th.
Clap that one, we won't get through many questions. Damien.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Damien Moore, and I'm the Conservative Party candidate, and I stood here last time. It's so nice to see so many people in this hall that were there last time. Some are good friends and colleagues now. So, I was born in Cumbria, and I went to live in Lancashire in 2002, where I attended university. I did a history degree, and then after that I joined the Asda Management Scheme. I'm not a career politician, and believe that my real-life experience will stand me in good stead as the MP for Southport. Since 2012 I've been a councillor on Preston City Council, and I've held the shadow portfolio for heritage and sport, and more recently the shadow finance portfolio, as well as being deputy leader of our group. I've put forward credible budgets that have had proposals in them which have included increasing library opening times, using buildings for functions to help them pay for themselves for their longevity, and reducing the number of councillors to reduce costs. These things have been achieved or are about to be implemented. Also in my ward, I've taken a lot of things on residents' behalf, particularly planning applications where they would have a detrimental impact on their quality of life. And I'm pleased to say that I've won them. Using this experience, I'll be a passionate advocate for Southport. And although there are many national issues, which we will probably come on tonight, like the economy and like Brexit, there are local things which have not improved and will not if the representation for Southport does not change. Residents are upset that Lord Street has shops closing regularly. They're upset to the threat to rail links to South Manchester. 2 years ago I took these to the attention of ministers and would do again. If elected, I would have the ear of government to provide solutions to problems, not just complain about them.
Good evening. I'm Liz Savage, your Labour candidate for Southport. I'm proud to be standing here this evening under Labour's fantastic manifesto. I stood here in Southport 2 years ago, and many of you gave me your support. So many that I doubled the vote and got Labour's best result here since 1970. This time I really stand a chance of winning, as this seat is now a true marginal. I'm standing in Southport as this is my main town. I live in Tarleton with my 2 teenage children, but our lives revolve around Southport. I have my own business here. The majority of my friends live here, and I act as an unpaid taxi service to my children and their friends who are here. I'm standing for Labour as I believe in our values of social justice and a more fair and equal society. As a mum of 2, I have a personal stake in the future of our town and this country. It's disgusting that the 5th richest country in the world is making it so that young people are starting their adult lives with 44k of debt if they go to university. Labour will scrap tuition fees and give free education from cradle to grave. And for those who don't go to university, we have to ensure that they have good quality apprenticeships, vocational courses and job opportunities that they deserve. And as someone who's experienced the care system, both as a patient and as a relative, we need a huge overhaul of this service. It is immoral that some of our most vulnerable in society are subjected to less than 15-minute visits and not even given the dignity of an appropriate continuous carer. Labour will revitalise the NHS and build in a national care service to address these issues.
That's 2 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's go straight into the questions. Our first question, and the questions will be on the screen for you to see, is from Ryan Morley. And the question is this: as a student nurse seeking future employment at the A&E department at Southport and Formby Hospital, what reassurances or guarantees can you provide that the facility will remain open in its current format? And let's start at the other end.
Okay, the Health and Social Care Act of 2012 has led to once creeping and now sweeping privatisation that now threatens Southport Hospital. It's already led to Virgin Care running some of the services. Labour will put a moratorium on the STP. Without this, we could see the full closure of our hospital, and therefore it's vital that you elect a Labour MP to work within a Labour government to give Labour a majority so that the STP can be stopped and so that any closure or change of services can be stopped to our hospital here in Southport.
Well, I'd like to say I'm proud of the government's record on the NHS. £8 billion more we have committed to the NHS. I don't think there's questions about the hospital being closed. These are clinical decisions which are made by doctors. And let me make something clear when it comes to what the other parties have said. So when it comes to this, Jonathan Ashworth, who's the Shadow Health Secretary, have said that these are not about cuts. And actually, the comment from the Liberal Democrat health spokesman said that the general public are sick of the NHS being treated like a political football. But that's what we'll see from the other parties. What we won't see is them saying that they support the money we're putting in, sustained money from a sustained economy that we can afford to pay. More doctors, more nurses, and treating more patients in the NHS.
Quiet, please. Thank you, David.
Southport A&E is under threat. It's under threat by the Conservative government's sustainability and transformation plans. The report, which was published in October 2016, specifically said that Southport A&E could be downgraded. I started a petition alongside other Liberal Democrats to get support from the residents of Southport. It's important, it's vital that Southport retains a critical care unit at our hospital. Any loss in service will force our hospital to become little more than a cottage hospital. The other thing that got me involved in politics actually was the loss of Children's A&E. Do you remember 2003? Yeah? I would just remind you that that closure came under a Labour government. It was a political decision made by Labour. So, you know, there are questions on that. The Liberal Democrat plan at this point is a 1p increase in income tax, which will raise £6 billion to be ring-fenced for our NHS, to cover adult social care, public health and mental health. And it's only by adding additional money specifically ring-fenced that we will safeguard our NHS.
Yeah, Sue says that the Southport and Ormskirk Hospital is under threat. I would say the whole of the NHS is under threat. I would vigorously oppose private involvement with regards to the contracts that are put out, such as the Virgin contract in West Lancashire. I think that's completely wrong. The work that they're doing used to be done within Southport and Ormskirk Hospital, and that's where the work should have remained. What I dislike very much about private involvement is that always with any private scheme you have money going into the back pockets of the shareholders, and that money should be spent on the National Health Service and not going to make a profit for these NHS, well not NHS, but for these health companies. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Right, I'm going to apologise now. You will not all be chosen to ask questions on this, so I'm going to choose one. If you have a question for the candidates on this topic, not on anything else, I'm going to randomly pick people. The first person to put his hand in the air is the gentleman in the purple top.
Thank you.
Okay, wait for the microphone. Okay, and could you please keep it as a short question? One sentence.
It's not a question. I just want to know why this organisation has allowed the hospital to pay out over £2 million for staff who have been at home waiting to be sorted out for something they're supposed to have done. Our MP here didn't have any guts whatsoever to go and get something done. It has been a disgrace. I've been in the hospital working there for 2 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, could we start with Sue, please?
My pen's just broken. Totally agree with the fact that there were a number of staff on gardening leave. What that did was that meant that Southport Hospital did not have adequate senior management at a time when it needed it most. When the Conservative government were putting in the sustainability transformation plans, they linked Southport Hospital to hospitals which have no geographic link to Southport whatsoever. They've linked us with Warrington, with Wiston. Absolutely ridiculous. It takes no regard of patient flows. So that was because we had poor leadership. We had weak leadership because the leaders, the former executives were all on gardening leave. So completely agree with the point you made.
Thank you, Sue. Terry?
Yeah, I promise you won't be hearing me say this all night, but I completely agree with what Sue said.
Is that it? Okay. Damien?
Yes, I certainly would be asking questions because the NHS has got to work effectively and efficiently in the nature of patient care.
Thank you. Liz?
Well, I second what Sue said actually, because, you know, basically, what a waste of money to have people on gardening leave from the NHS for that amount of time. It should have been sorted out much quicker, and we need to look at much swifter ways to deal with these sort of situations when they arise.
Still not sorted out.
Don't shout out, please. One other question. This gentleman here, at the hand first. Again, short, please.
You talk about the...
Hold on. We'll get the other microphone that we know works. We will have problems at times with the microphones as we're running around. We're going to get feedback, so forgive us if it's not always as smooth as it should be.
You often talk about the A&E, but what about the other areas of South Hospital, such as the spinal ward? Like, you know, it's not funded very well. There's always over-reliance on agency nursing, and a lot of nurses don't even think that will be here in 5 years. Is there anything that can be done to kind of like make sure that's safe, because that's a regional resource?
Okay, thank you. Damien?
Well, we need to resource the NHS properly, and that is through a strong economy. I think that when it comes to nurses, we do need to recruit more. And that's why our aim is to recruit more nurses, and not just agency nurses, people that want to go in at various levels, not just at degree level, but below that as well, to ensure that we have the staff and the capability to cope with it.
Thank you. And Sue?
A really good point. And I'd say to the audience here, do you know that there's a consultation about to start about orthopaedic services being delivered by Aintree, Liverpool and Broad Green? That those three hospitals are coming together to reshape orthopaedic services in Merseyside, and the impact that that will have on Ormskirk and Southport Hospital. I put Ormskirk first because that's where we have our orthopaedic surgery at the moment. Will be potentially undermine the financial sustainability of Southport Hospital. There are huge questions about the delivery of NHS services across Merseyside, and we need to be really clear, and we need to be really engaged in those to make sure that we in Southport may have our voices heard and have a say in those consultations.
Thank you. Terry?
I think there are an awful lot of problems in the NHS, and they can't all be solved by just having money thrown at them. One of the big problems is bureaucracy, and unless we solve the problem of bureaucracy, I'm afraid more and more money that we put in is just running out the bottom It's like pouring water into a colander. We've got to first put right what is wrong, and then we've got to put money in. Now, my party will put 11 billion in, but that money has got to come from somewhere. We would get it from foreign aid, but that's another story. But what I would say is that it's no use pouring money into the NHS without solving the problems within the NHS. That's the biggest problem we've got to solve.
Okay, the major problems with the spinal unit, I know. I was actually in talks with Jonathan Parry the day before he went off on gardening leave about it. But there's going to be 30 billion extra funding over the next Parliament for the NHS from Labour. We're already 200, right? Just wait for this, 250,000 nurses short in this country at the moment. We have a huge recruitment problem. And what did the Conservatives do? They took away nurses' bursaries. So we are going to reinstate bursaries for nurses. There's going to be able to train for free, be paid at the same time, and that will hopefully help some of the recruitment issues that we have got, not just here in Southport, but across the whole country.
We're going to move on to our second question from Jed Wright. How would you maximise the benefits to Southport of the new devolved powers that Liverpool City Region Authority and Mayor have in the areas of transport, infrastructure, education, health and housing? And we'll start with Terry.
This is quite a hard one for me, really, because I was really against the idea of the Liverpool City Region. But having said that, I mean, the fact that the Liverpool City Region is now up and running, we have to accept that we've got it and it's here to stay and we move on with it. I just hope, certainly on the transport, from the transport angle, that it will perhaps bring us, give us a similar situation to London, whereby they've operated under a similar to a city region organisation for a while. And they have the Transport for London, which really does seem to work for them. So if we can get something similar working within the Liverpool City region, I think that is an opportunity whereby we could reap benefits from this.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Liz?
Okay, I think that actually a Liverpool City region brings lots and lots of ideas forward for Southport. I would be prepared to work very closely with Steve Rotherham. He's actually a friend of mine already, so I've got a good working relationship with him which I can develop. Regarding transport, I've already met with Mersey Travel and Liam Robinson from there to talk about the bus re-regulation powers that Steve's got. As a Labour MP, I would be able to help with influencing the funding application for key routes. We've got infrastructure issues as well. We've got the Hibernian Transatlantic cable direct to Manchester. Steve is looking at creating a local spur for high-speed access to Southport so that we have a locally owned network. And we can create a local energy company to give us by 2040 a carbon zero Liverpool region by using tidal barrages. In education, there's a skills element to raise quality of apprenticeships to degree level, but health has not been devolved to Steve. We've got housing with regional approaches for proper spatial strategies, which are affordable and sustainable housing that can be delivered, and we'll address the balance in favour of brownfield sites. There's going to be stamp duty that will come from these buildings, and it's actually being devolved to the regions so that we can actually use it to fund more housing in the area.
Thank you.
Well, city regions were obviously an idea put forward particularly by George Osborne in creating what was the Northern Powerhouse, which was particularly making the point that rather than leave northern cities particularly to fall behind, that they could take control of their own affairs in lots of decisions, lots of localised decisions by local representatives to make the difference on the ground, which what they wanted to do there. But in each of these areas, there will be competition from within them. So the greatest thing that I would do is to be a strong champion for Southport, to make sure Southport didn't get left behind when it comes to all the other areas that were competing for the money, for the investment, to make sure the fair share was given to Southport, because there are issues in some of these areas where some are favoured more than others for political reasons, and that should not be the case.
Thank you very much.
When the initial devolution deal came before Sefton Council, the Liberal Democrats voted against it. And we voted against it because we didn't feel that the devolution deal went far enough. We feel that the Liverpool City Region devolution deal is a lacklustre, a second-rate deal when compared to the deals that other areas have got. The deal that Manchester has includes health and social care, which is a key issue. It's a key issue in Southport, it's a key issue on Merseyside. The deal as it stands at the moment doesn't recognise the geography of Southport. Most of our border is with West Lancashire. We also have concerns. In the initial draft for the Liverpool City Region, there was a tidal lagoon mentioned for Southport. By the time the final draft came through, that was a tidal barrage or a river barrage on Merseyside. So as far as we're concerned, we have the deal now, and it's absolutely vital that we ensure Southport has a strong voice. As part of that, and as my role with as councillor, I currently sit on the scrutiny committee for Liverpool City Region. So part of my role is to make sure that decisions made by that body are actually transparent, are in the interests of the residents of the area, and are best value for money. One of the reports that I've recently worked on was for the cost of short hop bus journeys. So there is work already going on there. The devolution deal as it stands said 30 million over 30 years. That sounds a huge amount of money, but when you break it down across 5 local authorities, it's actually not very much at all. So it's about having a strong voice for Southport, and it's also to make sure that Southport doesn't just get sucked into Liverpool. Do you know, when Ancient and Royal were initially speaking to Sefton about the Open,
10 seconds.
Yeah, they wanted to make the town, the locality, Liverpool. It was only by shouting very, very loudly that it's Southport and it's Birkdale that are hosting the Open. We have to be very, very strong to make sure Southport doesn't get sucked in.
I'm going to take one question. If anyone has a question on this subject. It's gone down. Did you have a hand up?
It's not another subject, it's another subject.
No question. Oh, one question over there in the middle. Keep it short, please, sir.
Hello. Given that Liverpool City Region have a Labour mayor and Sefton Council is predominantly Labour controlled, how do you think you will get on in cooperation with those two people, the Labour mayor and the Labour council?
Okay, we'll start with Terry, please.
We've also got a Labour crime and what are they called? Police and Crime Commissioner as well. They more or less got the monopoly. I mean, I don't quite know where you're coming from with that question, really. I suppose one might say the fact that they're all from the same party, they should get on well together, but the fact that we don't have any Labour councillors in Southport, I would say that there's a conflict there.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Liz?
I think there's a huge conflict that's been evident for some years, that there's a problem with not having any Labour councillors here. You need a Labour voice here, and that's why I'm asking you to elect me on Thursday. Elect me on Thursday and you will see a change in Southport. You will see somebody who can put pressure on the Liverpool City Regional Mayor. Someone who can put pressure and has put pressure and has got things out of Sefton Council just because I am the Labour representative. That is what will happen if you elect me on Thursday as your Labour MP.
Damien?
Well, if elected, I'd be a Conservative MP, hopefully with a Conservative government, which would make much more of a difference than what they can do with them.
As a Sefton councillor, I have a track record of working with the Labour Council in Sefton. You know, I've delivered cross-party things to Southport, including free parking over Christmas. But I'm just picking up a point that Terry made when he said that Labour got on very well in Liverpool. I think if you read the Liverpool Echo, people would say that that's actually not the case. There's an awful lot of infighting within Labour in Liverpool, and I think that's damaging. I think it's about being able to have an open and a cross-party dialogue, and with a track record of already doing that and working with Labour in Sefton, I think I could deliver that. Thank you.
And we're going to move on to our third question, which is from Pete Cunningham. What measures do you intend to implement to tackle the ever-increasing problem of homelessness throughout the borough, especially within Southport town centre itself? And we will start with Sue.
Okay, can I just be clear on this? Do you mean homelessness or do you mean actually rough sleeping? Because they're two different things.
Is Pete here? Let's work with rough sleeping.
Okay, I mean, we are very, very conscious that we have a problem with rough sleepers in Southport town centre.
Can I just stop you for one moment? Why don't you tell everyone what the distinction is between the two before we start that, and then I'll give you answer the question.
Okay, so rough sleepers choose to sleep on the street.
Listen to the answer, please.
No, if I could just finish. Rough sleepers are sleeping on our streets in Southport. Homeless people are people who can't find a home. There is a difference. There's a rough sleeper service currently in place in Southport, which is led by the Light for Life charity.
Just stick to the definition and then you get an answer, okay?
Sorry?
Just the definition between rough sleeping and homelessness.
Yeah.
Define the two of them, just briefly.
I've just done that.
Okay, are you all happy with the definition? Yeah. Sorry, you carry on.
Sorry. So we have a rough sleeper service already in place in Southport, and that does outreach with the rough sleepers. In a lot of cases, what we need is additional funding provided to that service, because in many cases their problems go beyond just sleeping rough. It's about drug addiction, it's about mental health issues. So it's about making sure we have a wraparound service. So it's about making sure that we have funding available to extend that service. In the case of homelessness, we need to make sure that we have accommodation that is suitable and easily accessible to those people who find themselves in that position. So we need to make sure that we have new homes. We also need to make sure that we have flat accommodation and that we're working with landlords. There's currently a consultation programme going on about licensing of landlords in Southport to make sure that those vulnerable people who find themselves in those positions actually do get the support that they need and that they require, and that will help them to move forward.
Thank you, sir. Damien?
Well, I think first of all it would be working with local charities on the ground in Southport to get their understanding from people that they will be working with on a daily basis to try and make their lives better. Obviously, these are very vulnerable people who've ended up in the situation that they are, and we are committed as a government to eliminating rough sleeping through the Homeless Reduction Act, and we have invested 500 million since 2010 to prevent homelessness, and that will go up to 350 million by 2020. That's about making sure that there's proper provision to protect those most vulnerable people, and the service around that actually works for them to eliminate it. And again, I would say making sure that we've got people in those services to protect vulnerable people, those that maybe have mental health issues, particularly those, often cases of those who've come out of the services, for example. I would like to see more money put into that, so that when they are coming out of a particular armed service, that there's a provision in there to ensure that they can go back into normal life and be quite capable of doing that.
Thank you. And Liz?
Make no mistake, the growing homelessness in this country is caused by the austerity measures that this government and the current coalition made, okay? It's arisen from decisions made by the Conservatives on pay, housing, mental health and social security, and people do not choose to sleep rough on our streets. So how would I tackle it? Well, I'd consult with different groups, such as Shoreline and Light for Life, and others in the borough, such as Bosco House in Bootle. But most of all, I'd work with a Labour government to tackle the reasons for it. With prevention, we would strongly believe that a minimum wage and scrapping 6 weeks before giving universal credit and increasingly hard sanctions for people who haven't turned up for an interview because they're at hospital with a sick relative. It is not right, it is not fair, it is not good for our country. And we need to help people with addictions, okay? We need to help those who've got drug addictions, not criminalise them for them. We need to give the support where it is needed and the support for mental health issues. We need to give proper support here.
Thank you.
I think the gentleman who submitted the question, Pete Cunningham, has done an awful lot himself.
It's not that Pete Cunningham.
Right, okay, well, I'm talking about the other Pete Cunningham then, who didn't submit the question, who has done an awful lot in Southport for homeless people by setting them up in properties throughout the town and outside of the town. In fact, he set them up throughout the country. And I think if people were to follow his example, I think the world would be a better place. I will say Light for Life do an awful lot of good work. I do also admire, in Liverpool they've got a night shelter, and I do think that we could do with having a night shelter, certainly in Southport, in order to deal with people who are picked up from the street at night time, just as a temporary refuge. And I will also touch on the fact that I think the soup kitchen is doing a wonderful job here in supplying meals to these people.
Thank you, Terry. So you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to come back. Terry, we do have a night shelter in Southport. It's available to people overnight. It provides a facility.
So they don't have to book in?
No, it's a sit-up service. It's a sit-up service, and they have access to a hot meal, I believe, and also showering facilities.
And that's good. That's something.
Thank you for clarifying that. We're going to go on to our fourth question. It's from Oliver Adams. I fail to see how the Liberal Democrat's John Pugh has made choices based on our community's values. As an MP, he witnessed the recent failure of King George V College and did not seem visible to young people. He also went against Liberal ideology, voting against the same-sex couples marriage bill. If elected, what will each candidate do differently to ensure your voice in Parliament is representative of your constituents? And we'll start with Terry, please.
I'm afraid I can't answer for John Pugh, really, and he's not here to answer for himself. Is he? Well, he's not on the panel.
Well, you don't need to answer for John, just for yourself.
With regards to, I can only pick out the various points in the question. With regards to same-sex couples marriage, I mean, personally, I wouldn't have supported that. I certainly support, can't even think of what it's called now. What do you call the liaison between? Yeah, partnership. I certainly support partnership between same-sex people, but I didn't support, and I can't support the marriage, because I think that's something completely different. That might be the case in your opinion, but we all have opinions. Just looking to see what some of the other points are. I think that was the main point that he brought up, really.
It was about ensuring that your voice is representative of your constituents.
Well, I think it's up to an MP to make sure that he does represent all his constituents fairly. But you have to take into account all your constituents, and you can't really represent just one minor group within that, within your constituents. You have to take into account the views of all of them.
Thank you, James. Sue?
I may be a Liberal Democrat, but I'm not John Pugh. He has been our MP. He's been a fantastic constituency MP for the last 16 years. And I'm delighted that I've worked alongside him over that time. Although John and I do disagree on a number of issues, and one of those was same-sex marriage. I do support same-sex marriage. I noticed there was one point about KGV College. I'm currently working with both Southport College and KGV for their planned merger. It's absolutely essential that Southport has an educational establishment that will provide education to our young people in their hometown, and that includes an A-level provision, but also from the college, some technical support and some apprenticeships. And I was very, very fortunate to take Tim Farron to the college recently to see some of the excellent work that they've been doing. As far as a Southport MP, as a local councillor, I have a track record of delivering for my residents, for listening to my residents. If I am the MP, when I am the MP, I would be holding regular surgeries. I know John's office has always been open to people to call in for help and for support. I would duplicate that, but I would also make sure that I was running surgeries and speaking to people and making myself as available as I have as a councillor.
Thank you.
Liz,
yeah.
Okay. I was quite disgusted at how the Liberal Democrats handled the situation when KGV was put in the situation it was 2 years ago. My daughter's school closed down because local politicians didn't have faith in it. And once you start slating a school or a college, less people will go there, and that will mean that eventually it will close. And I was very, very concerned about KGB, so I came out and did what I could to support them. It was words more than anything else. It wasn't, taking direct action or anything, but I did give words of support to the local college. Now, what would I do to be a voice for constituents? Well, I would hold bi-yearly meetings with different groups, and that's because I would hope to be having enough meetings that I was meeting a different group every week within the community. So to begin with, that would be like elderly provision providers, LGBT members, business groups, churches together, and there's lots more groups within the community that I would be meeting with. I believe that if it wasn't 6 months, it would be 3 monthly. So there would be a chance to come and see me as a group. On top of that, there would be surgeries as well. And I'd like to turn from this being a Liberal stronghold to a Labour stronghold, so that we can give you the best representation that you can have.
Oh, no. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I'm going to say it's a little unfair to put John's name in there and then not allow him to be able to defend himself on this. So I'm not quite sure about that. I can understand the situation that any MP would be in, with all of your constituents having completely different views about a whole series of issues, and you will have to make decisions in Parliament based on what you think at the end of the day. However, I do think it is important to get out into the community. I already, as a local councillor, do surgeries. We have a surgery every week which one of us attends. But I think it's about making sure that you go to them as much as them coming to you. And one of the reasons that I'm looking so tanned is not because I've been on holiday or the sunbeds, as someone said the other day. It's because I've been knocking on doors. I would continue to do that because I think the MP, a visible presence on your street, is an important one. In terms of some of the decisions, again, I agree with certainly the decisions on same-sex marriage. I don't think there would be any need to change that now. And I think that making sure that you can be representative because you're constantly listening to your constituents is a very important point. And you start to fail when you stop listening.
Thank you, Jamie. just going to hold off on questions from the floor until some other ones that come up later on, because we've got a lot of important questions coming up. I know every question can be important, but we just need to think about time, so I'm really sorry, okay. Let's move on to our next question, which is from Rick Catton. There has been a lot of debate on tactical voting in this constituency. What is your view on tactical voting? Damien.
There has been a lot of talk about tactical voting. I think tactical voting for two parties to come second from what I've been led to believe in some of the reports that I've seen. Personally, I don't really believe in tactical voting. I think you should vote how your conscience dictates. And all I would say is if you vote Conservative, you'll get a Conservative.
Thank you. And Terry?
Yeah, I don't really think that tactical voting is a serious problem within our system. I really don't think it is, because it's ingrained in people's DNA, really, what party they're going to vote for. And you know, there is no way that you're going to persuade, there's no way that I'm going to persuade a lot of the people in here tonight to vote for me. And the same applies to the other three members on this panel. Most people have come here tonight having already decided which way they're going to vote. And if I said, don't vote for me, vote for Sue, vote for Damien, vote for Liz, then I don't think you'd take any notice of what I was saying. So I don't really think that tactical voting is a serious consideration.
Okay, thank you, Terry. And Liz?
Well, personally, I do believe in voting positively for a party. But that's not what's happened here in Southport. And there's not many constituencies that are quite like Southport. However, if you want to keep a party out, then you need to vote Labour in this next election. Because in 2015, I doubled the vote and made this a three-way marginal seat. Because people were let down in 2010. The Liberal Democrats said, vote for us, we'll keep the Tories out. And what did they do? They went and put a Tory government in. They used and abused your vote and your trust in them. Don't be fooled again, please. YouGov polls have put us in second place in this constituency. We've seen the results of the mayoral ballot, where we were put first. So there are several strong indicators that if you vote Labour this time, it will not be a wasted vote, and if you all club together and vote for us, then we will return a Labour MP here in Southport.
I'd like to start first of all by saying that I didn't say that. That was not me. I'd like to start by saying that actually, do you know what, in Southport your vote really does matter. This is a tight race between the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. Make no mistake. Make no mistake. Labour come third and have come third here since the 1970s. They have not won a council seat in Southport since 72. If we look at the local election results in 2016, Liberal Democrats won 7 out of 7 seats. The residents of Southport know what the Liberal Democrats do for the communities, they respect that and they support us for that. If I can just pick up the 2 points. There was a mention there of the YouGov poll. Can I just give you some clarity on that? It's based on 75 residents in a constituency. Southport has an electorate of over 70,000. They have asked 0.01%. That is not representative of Southport. The YouGov poll has also looked at surrounding seats, and if you look at that, we've got Labour in Sefton Central and we've got the Tories in South Ribble. So it is not representative, it is not an accurate poll, and the methodology that they have used has been called into question. Liz mentioned the mayoral results. 75% of electors in Southport did not take part in that election. There is no way that you can say that is a fair representation of how people will vote in Southport on Thursday. Vote Liberal Democrat, keep the unknown Tory from Preston out.
Thank you. We're going to go on to our sixth question, which is from Roy Chadwick. Current plans for tourism and other businesses to thrive in Southport are failing. What would you do differently? And in that, he's looking for your vision for Southport. So let's start with Sue.
Oh, okay. I think it's a great question. For those of you who have been reading the papers, you will know that I have come forward with a vision for Southport. Southport is a fantastic town. It is a great place to live, and it's a great place to raise a family, and it's a great place to work. We need, when we move forward, to have a conversation among the community so that people decide what they want to do and how they see Southport moving forward. One part of that is to respect our heritage. The people who came before us did a fantastic job building Southport, and we need to respect that. One of the things that we do need to recognise, though, is that tourism is a major industry for Southport. It's a major industry for Sefton. Do you know £489 million was generated by Southport for Labour Council Sefton in 2015? And it's that ghost again. and it employs 6,300 people. But given those figures, the Labour Council slashed funding to tourism in Southport in this year's budget. And can I tell you, that was backed by the Conservatives. As the Liberal Democrats, I was proud to put forward a plan to safeguard that funding. It was a costed plan, and neither the Conservatives nor Labour would support that. Tourism is vital. It needs the funding, and it needs some new themes coming forward. We need to work with the businesses, we need to work with our hoteliers, and we need to attract more footfall into Southport. As it stands now, we have a large number of coaches that come, but we need those people to come for longer. We need to look at regenerating Lord Street. I've got some plans about making Lord Street a unique retail destination.
2 minutes.
Can I carry on?
Briefly. Finish your sentence.
A unique retail destination, okay? We can't compete with Liverpool One, we can't compete with the Trafford Centre. We need to build on our uniqueness, and we need to make sure that we encourage independent retailers so that we offer something different, so that people will come to Southport and will enjoy and will stay here.
That was a long sentence.
I think I'll start with the point of information for Sue on that £1 million that she says was taken from the tourism budget. You did last night. This year, 650k was taken to support the golf tournament here in Southport to make sure it could still go ahead. And 350,000 was taken to the Southport Convention Centre this year. But I ask you, what has 20 years of a Lib Dem MP done for Southport? Okay. If you elect me as your MP, then I will work with Sefton Council and with the regional mayor to develop tourism. I would like to see a scheme in Southport which puts pressure on the hotels and the bed and breakfast to come up to a specific standard. Because for many people, the first time they come to Southport will be for a conference. It will be to come here for holidays. And quite frankly, some of our hotels are not up to standard at the moment. So we need to work with them to bring them up to a good standard that people want to come back here. And to do that, we also need to market Southport better to overseas visitors. We have lots of cruise ships coming into Liverpool, and we need to benefit from the trade that they are bringing in from American tourists who would absolutely love this traditional English coastal town. It is so important for our economy that we work on attracting those American tourists to here. So working with the Mayor of the City Region and Mersey Travel, I will help to develop better links into Southport. We will retain the free bus passes too, which means that people from Merseyside can travel into Southport. And let's keep that footfall in Lord Street. Let's get it higher so that people want to come and invest in Lord Street.
Thank you.
I think Southport is a wonderful place to live, and I think it's also a wonderful place to visit. And I think we need to encourage more people to come and visit our town. I mean, we have got a fantastic history in Southport. We've got fantastic buildings. Unfortunately, we've got to the point where places are looking a little bit tired. They need to be smartened up. They need to be given a coat of paint. Our hotels need smartening up. But most of all, the biggest problem in our town is parking. It's absolutely impossible for people to come into Southport, find somewhere decent to park. I know we've got a park and ride. That does suit some people, but it doesn't suit everybody. But we do need some better on-street parking, and we do need parking tariffs that attract people to come into the town. Now, UKIP put forward a few years ago, and we've been hammering on about it since, that the parking in Southport should be free between 10:30 in the morning and after 4:30 in the afternoon, to give local people, residents, an opportunity to come into the town when the town would normally be quiet, to come into the town and to give the businesses some incentive in the early morning and the later afternoon. Now, the council have never taken any interest in this proposal, but I think it's something that we've got to adopt, that we can take forward and will make Southport attractive again for people to come in and spend their time here. Something else I will mention is the train service, because although we've got a decent train service to Liverpool, the train service to Manchester is absolutely abysmal, and we need to improve the Manchester service in the same way and upgrade it in the same way that we've got the Liverpool service from Southport. Now, I'm involved in a group, Oxter, who have done a lot of work in trying to improve the line, and I know Sue's also involved in a group, and I think we've got to really work with these organisations for the improved future of Southport.
Thank you, Terry. Damien?
Well, Sue, it would be the unknown face from Preston that would be the well-known face in Westminster when it comes to fighting for the residents of Southport and improving 2 decades of decline under the Liberal Democrats. They don't have the ear of anyone on the council, and they won't have the ear of anyone in the government. For every single one of their councillors, I would have an equal and more number of ministers and secretaries of state fighting for people in Southport on issues that I took to them, because I've done it already. I've already spoken to several rail ministers. I've already spoken to the business secretary. He came here to Southport to listen to what shopkeepers on Lord Street want to say, and as well as business rate relief, which we're putting more money into. Specifically, uniquely to Lord Street, he's also looking at maintenance grants to maintain buildings that many businesses could not afford to do, and to get them in a better state of repair than what they are now, brightening up, thriving, and making sure that we can have a town to be proud of.
I'm going to take a question on this, so gentlemen there, wait for the microphone, please.
I don't want a microphone.
You do need one, so we can go on the internet. You're going worldwide.
The greatest vision that we can offer for this town is a decent, excellent education for our young people. We need a grammar school in... Is that the question? There are individuals... Quiet please. Quiet please. There are individuals I see seated here who benefited from an education at KGB.
Can I just stop you for a moment? Could you just get to the question? Has it got anything to do with business?
Please, would each candidate commit to bringing a grammar school to
That is not really to do with business and tourism, but what we'll do is we'll move on, if you don't mind. We did say we'll stick to the theme, and I want to be strict on that, so we're going to stick to the theme. But thank you for your question, sir. So there's our guys with the microphones. There's a lady there, if you'd like to take it.
What you've all just said is true. Trains, the tourism, everything you've said is correct. Norman Wallace has done a fabulous job down the front there. However, none of you have mentioned the empty shops on Lord Street. The reason why there's empty shops on Lord Street, and I know this for a fact because I know people who've had property there, they can't afford the rates, they can't afford the business rates. What are you going to do to speak to the people who own them buildings to bring them, because what's the point in coming to Southport? You haven't got any decent shops.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You need to talk to them to bring them rates down.
We'll go to Sue.
Absolutely. I think there are two things with regard to the empty shops on Lord Street. The first one is that a lot of those empty shops are owned by pension funds and investment companies. They're just a line on their balance sheet. They don't necessarily, and they don't have an interest in Southport. It's working on the work, it's continuing the work that John Pugh's already done about talking to those pension funds, talking to those investment companies, finding out what their long-term plans are and making sure that they actually recognise the impact that their decisions are having on our fantastic town in Lord Street. The second one is working with landlords to make the shops more attractive to independent retailers and things. Some of those shops are incredibly large spaces, and so if you look at the internal space, we need to look at working with that to make it more affordable, but also to make it more feasible for businesses. So shared premises or centres, you know, we've done very, very well the Northern Quarter with the bars. We need to look at doing similar things with regard to areas across the town.
Liz?
I believe I did actually mention Lord Street, and I did mention increasing the footfall to encourage more people to invest here. But Labour will introduce a package of reforms to business rates, including switching from RPI, which is normally higher than CPI. So we will switch from RPI to CPI indexation to exempt new investment in plant and machinery from valuations, and will ensure that businesses have got access to a proper appeals process if you're not happy with how your business rate has been calculated. But we'll also review the whole business rate system.
Thank you. And Terry, do you want to respond to the question?
Yeah, I think it's essential that we cut the business rates for small businesses. I mean, small businesses are the backbone of our economy, really. You know, if you combine all the small businesses together, they contribute far more towards our economy than a lot of these big corporations. Now, what we would do would be to cut by 20% business rates on premises with a rateable value that was below 50,000, and we would cut by 50% business rates for those businesses in coastal enterprise zones, and of course Southport would fall into that category as a coastal enterprise zone. So I think this is important that we do cut business rates, and I think that would make a big difference to the appearance of Lord Street and the Chapel Street and the other roads around.
Thank you, Terry. Damien?
Well, none of those shops have closed under a Conservative MP, is the first thing I'd say. The second thing I would say, the second thing I would say, that 600,000 small businesses aren't paying any business rates at all because of our work on extending rate relief. And I think the marketing and the prospects of putting together a great package for investors to look at, the people that wanted to open shops, would be the best thing to promote Southport. Now, I think that doing that as the MP for Southport to a Conservative government would be the way forward.
Thank you, David. We're going to move on to this, our next question, which is also connected to the whole idea of business and enterprise in the area. Southport is likely to experience increased competition from the internet and newer technologies, more progressive cities such as Liverpool and Manchester. How can Southport respond to this changing environment? And we'll start with Liz, please.
Okay, I've got lots of ideas for how we can develop Southport, and I'd like us to work with others to create an incubation hub for small businesses, and I think this could be ideally located on the old Kingsway site, because we are ideally located here in Southport with UCLan, Edge Hill and the Liverpool universities nearby, and if we can bring those graduates here to start their own businesses and learn from other authorities, then that would be a really, really good boost for Southport. So I've got connections at Salford City Council, and I would use those connections to find out more about how they have developed this hub in Media City. I've already been on a tour of it to have a look around, and I would be looking at bringing that sort of idea here to Southport. Labour pledged to bring in universal super-fast broadband within the next Parliament, and these new little businesses that could develop in this hub would really benefit from that.
Thank you. Damien?
Well, I certainly think that we need to embrace change, and we need to support people that want to change and able to take their businesses forward. I think that absolutely we've got to have people with the passion and the energy and the drive to do that, and rather than having people going out of Southport to the cities around it, I would like to see people coming from the cities around it into Southport to share their expertise, to share their knowledge and to share their good practices for ensuring how an economy in the changing environment can make a difference to a place like Southport, bringing people in who've got the specialist skills and enterprise acumen to do that.
Thank you. And Sue?
Yep. Southport currently has two main employment sectors really, hospitality and the care sector, and they tend to be low wage jobs. So we need to look at ways to encourage businesses to set up in Southport. We need to attract entrepreneurs. And a key idea that I've been working on with people and with businesses in Southport is to look at a digital beach. It's building on something that happened in Bournemouth, that Bournemouth actually did when they were looking to reinvent themselves as a seaside resort. It's about working with the technology companies we already have in Southport, with the college, with KGV, to develop a creative and digital hub, and that would harness actually the achievements of Tech North in Manchester. And basically in Manchester, you know, the house prices have gone up. It's an expensive city. So what we would say is, well, we'll move to Southport. We have a fantastic coastline. We have a fantastic way of life. You know, come into Southport. We need to build on the infrastructure that we've currently had. There's already been mention of the cable that comes in. I've been banging on about that for months and for years. You know, we need to embrace the new technologies. Talking about embracing new technologies, Google are actually planning to come to Southport. I've been in negotiation with Google. It's part of their coastal strategy. So, you know, things are happening. I've been speaking to the businesses. I've been speaking to the IT companies. Things are happening. You know, Southport has the chance to make itself a creative and technology centre. I'd also add to that, you know, we've been talking for a while, certainly as a Liberal Democrat, about a tidal lagoon. A tidal lagoon would generate and would build a green economy here in Southport, and that would be an economic driver second to none in terms of new technology and new fields for investment.
Thank you, sir.
I agree with everything that's been said by the panel so far, but what we really need to do is also get Sefton Council interested in investing in Southport, because unfortunately they don't seem to realise that Southport is the goose that lays the golden egg, and really if they don't fund tourism in Southport, then I'm afraid it's a sorry state of affairs. Any money that they put into Southport, they will get back with interest. So let's get the Sefton Council to start putting more money. Okay, they put money into the Atkinson, what used to be the art centre, and it's a fantastic building. But now they've cut the tourism budget, so that the Atkinson is now only open at certain days. I don't think it opens on a Sunday, which is a day when the town is full of tourists. So really, they've got to give some more thinking to this and really invest in Southport if they want to reap some profit from Southport.
Thank you, sir. Keep, of course, on. First hand in the air, which was that gentleman there, sorry. Oh, okay. I saw that one. I'll come to you next, okay?
Hi. I run a small business in Southport developing renewable energy and green technology projects. Every decision that has been made by the Conservative government since they came elected in 2015 has been made to close down these green technologies. I've got many friends that have actually been developing tidal current projects, wave tidal lagoon projects, and all of these projects, as a result of Conservative policy, are basically failing, and people, very highly qualified people, are losing their jobs and having to lay staff off. What would you do if you were the MP for Southport to encourage the new government to support green energy technologies, which is our future?
Thank you, Liz.
Well, the Labour Party supports tidal lagoons. However, whether it's a viable option here in Southport is another matter at the moment. I've been looking into this, and apparently they need to be 8 metres high for the tide. Now, the problem with that is that Southport last month only had 1 week where the tide was coming in to reach that height. So what would a Labour government do? What would I do? Well, the first thing I would do is I would ban fracking. The Labour government will insulate 4 million homes so that there's less demand on energy. And I've already supported solar power in council housing over in West Lancashire. We put solar panels on as many houses as we could before the tariff got dropped last year. So there's these things that can be done.
That's time, Liz. Thank you. Damien?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would say, we do support business. We've got 1 million more businesses in this country than we did in 2010. It's about making sure that we've got a tax regime that works for it. But also in terms of energy policy, it is about energy security and making sure we have the right energy mix. I don't know the particular situation with the gentleman there, but I'd be more than happy to talk to him about it.
Okay. Sue?
Okay, as Liberal Democrats, we brought forward the Green Investment Bank, and that's something that we're still committed to. In terms of the tidal lagoon, we fully support the tidal lagoon at Swansea, and just for clarity, the people behind the Swansea tidal lagoon have been to Southport and have confirmed that it is a potential site, so there have been discussions about that already. I was against fracking in 2011. I'm still against fracking. It's not the right way to go as a country. We need to be engaging with businesses such as that gentleman's. That's where the future lies. We need to be looking at renewable. We don't need to be looking backwards at fossil fuels.
Thank you.
With regard to any business proposal, I would like to listen to what that business proposal was and then act accordingly. Unfortunately, I don't know what this business proposal is, so I can't really voice an opinion.
Okay. Lady down on the second row. John, could you... I promised that we would take a question.
Hi Sue, you have an IT business, don't you, located in Liverpool? Is there any reason why you didn't put that in Southport to begin with?
Actually, when the business was moved up from London in 2001, we moved the staff as well. The staff came with us. The staff were predominantly Japanese, and they wanted to live in an area around Chester which had a high Japanese population, so that was why it was located in Southport. In Liverpool.
Thank you.
I hope that answers it.
Sorry, you've had your question. We do need to move on. We're going to move on to 5 of our local issues that have been put forward. Something that Terry brought up earlier that got a lot of energy in the room. Strict and inflexible enforcement of parking management within Southport is seen as many as detrimental to the health and growth potential of the town. How will you help in introducing improved practices which meet the needs of the town as a whole? Terry, do you want to add anything to what you already said?
Well, yeah, I've recently, probably about 6 months ago now, taken up with Sefton Council an issue with regards to the parking charges in the town. And that was, probably everybody in this room knows, but any money that's taken from on-street parking has to be spent on transport measures, I think is the words they use. Now, I suspected that wasn't the case with regards to the money that's collected through the parking meters in Sefton. And I took this matter up by going through some freedom of information requests. Now, the way that these freedom of information requests were leading me was to highlight the fact that all the money wasn't being spent on traffic issues, and therefore it would be against the law. Now, there were certain case histories in this country. One was in Weston-super-Mare, I think, and there were a couple of others dotted around the country as well, where the council had to back down and lower the parking charges that they'd increased because of this. But then, luckily for Sefton Council, they were able to wheedle their way out of this at the last minute, because it came just at a point where they had to put new machines into Southport, so they were able to say that the money that they collected was going on spending these new machines. Nevertheless, I mean, that might be a wasted story really, but nevertheless, it's not something that I want to give up on. It is something that I want to pursue. And I think that the parking charges in this town are outrageous.
Damien?
Well, the parking charges do need reform because they're driving people away, and that's an absolute fact. When I talk to businesses out there, that they've experienced customers of theirs saying we don't want to come back, or we don't come back as frequently as we would because they've been put off by the parking charges. And I don't know why they don't quite understand on Sefton Council that as business rates become more of a part of what local authorities will use to spend money, they will need to retain as many businesses possible to get the biggest take from those businesses in terms of what they want to spend that money on. So why would you put off people from coming into Southport because they don't go to the businesses, which end up being businesses failing, and that is not acceptable. And I think that I would take that to them and I would go higher if need be, because you're almost strangling your own economy with a system that does not work, that is not fair, and that does not do anything to provide jobs in Southport.
Thank you. Liz?
Parking is always a tricky issue because there's a fine balance to be met in many different ways. Because if you allow free parking everywhere, when we've seen this in the past, then people who are working in the shops, etc., will park in those areas. So we need to find a way where it's actually going to benefit the shops by having people come in. Sefton have got a major problem in that they've had 51% of their budget cut. It's going to be very, very difficult to persuade them on car parking charges. So, one of the things that I would like to speak with them about is 20-minute free parking with a residence permit for those who are in Southport already, that they can use the shops. If they've got a special permit, that would be free for 20-minute parking, so that local residents are benefiting and can use the shop. I always use the park and ride when I come into Southport. It costs £2 on a normal day. I think it's absolutely disgusting though that when there's a special event on, like there is at the moment, that it's £5. If you are coming to Southport for the first time, to the park and ride, and you see £5 on a special event day, you're going to think it's £5 every day and not use it the next time you come. So I think we need to look at the pricing of the park and ride. I think we need to market the park and ride better, and that we also need better infrastructure in our transport, which we will get by working again, I'm saying again and again and again, I will work with the regional city mayor to get bus and train services that are better for this town, so that people aren't needing to rely on their cars so much. And only a Labour MP can do this effectively for this town.
Thank you.
I think one of the key issues, and certainly the one that I've been arguing about, is actually fairness. Do you know you can park at Burbo Bank, which is where the Anthony Gormley statues are, for 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours, and they have toilets. In Southport, on the seafront, if you want to park for anything more than an hour, it's going to cost you £4.20. There is no fairness in the parking charges that Sefton currently have in Southport and across Sefton in actual fact. So, the Labour Council increased the parking charges in 2016. I voted against that. That was to raise £547,000 for Sefton Council. We have a track record of Southport being used as the cash cow, and it's not fair. If I could go on, one of the things that I do think we actually need to look at is movement across the town. So people do come into the town, they park at Central 12. If you park at Central 12, it's not actually easy to get from Central 12 via Lord Street to Ocean Plaza to Pleasureland to the seafront. One of the things that I have been talking to Arriva, to Ocean Plaza, to Southport Bid and to Southport Council about is looking at some sort of transport link between and around Southport, so you have a transport, picks you up potentially at Central 12, the rail station, takes you via Lord Street, along Lord Street to Pleasureland, to the seafront, to Ocean Plaza and comes back. We've asked the council to look at extending the park and ride service so that it can actually encompass more than it currently does. There are lots and lots of possibilities in that. In terms of working with the Labour Council, I delivered free parking at Christmas in 2015. The council refused to give free parking to Southport in the run-up to Christmas, the most important time for most of our businesses, and with a cross-party agreement we were able to deliver that free parking.
We've got half an hour left and we've still got more than half the questions, so please be seated. We're going to move on to our next question, which is from Sandra Nixon.
All questions have been relating to parochial affairs in Southport.
As I've just said, sir, we're now moving on to national issues.
Larger questions.
As I said, we're just now moving on to national issues, sir. It's from Sandra Nixon. I'm an animal lover and was outraged by the Tory manifesto regarding the free vote on the repeal of the fox hunting ban. What are your views? And we'll start with Damien.
Might keep you waiting a bit long. No. I'll be very clear. The pursuing of an animal to near exhaustion, to be ripped apart by dogs, I think is unacceptable. I would not be voting to repeal the ban on fox hunting. I would work with colleagues such as Conservatives Against Fox Hunting, but not just those, put forward an all-parliamentary group, work with colleagues across the political spectrum to ensure that it doesn't happen. We have done lots of things to be proud of in government for better quality for animals, farm animals, CCTV in slaughterhouses, the export of live animals in poor conditions. We've done a lot there. So I think this would be a retrograde step that I would not support, and I would be very vocal and very, very, very persuasive with my colleagues to ensure that it doesn't happen.
Thank you.
I would not support a repeal in the fox hunting ban. just following on from Damien's words, how anyone can consider fox hunting to be a sport. It is barbaric, it has no place in our society, and you know, following on Damien, I'd work on a cross-party basis to ensure that that didn't happen. I'm delighted that in this general election the Greens have chosen not to stand and have given their support to me as the Liberal Democrat candidate, as having the greenest views moving forward in terms of welfare, animal welfare. It's absolutely vital that we do everything we can to safeguard animal welfare. The welfare of farm chickens is an important one. So absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
I think Sue will find that that was a local party decision by the Greens, and that in other areas of the country they've given their support and backing to the Labour Party, because actually we can have the most influence on this. I think it's absolutely appalling that this issue has raised its ugly head again when we banned it so long ago. I'm proud to be on a council which banned herd coursing at Altcar, and I am proud to belong to a party that banned fox hunting. Cruel, barbaric sports like this have absolutely no place in British society.
As a lifelong animal lover, I've already told you I've got 3 dogs and a cat, I deplore any cruelty towards animals at all, and I consider fox hunting to be extremely cruel. I'm very much against fox hunting, agree with everything that the other people on the panel have said. With regard to animal welfare generally, it's only when we've left the European Union, if we leave the European Union, that we can regain control of our animal health and welfare. Currently, EU laws prevent us from banning live exports for slaughter, which causes unnecessary suffering to the animals being carried across to the continent for slaughter. I think that is absolutely deplorable, and that is another big advantage in coming out of the European Union. It also prevents us from labelling food killed as halal food. Now that is another reason to come out of the European Union, because they prevent that sort of labelling. I would also like to see installed CCTV in all the abattoirs in this country. I am very much in favour of animal welfare. I hate animal cruelty, and I think any sentences brought upon people for animal cruelty should be trebled.
We're going to move on to our next question from Janet Harrison. I'm sorry, sir.
I know that before you stop.
I know, and I'm not allowing questions, sir. I said before I would not allow questions after. Please sit down, sir. Please. Sir.
Sit down. Sit down.
Sir, you're wasting time for everyone, I'm afraid. Sorry. Let's move on to our next question, which is from Janet Harrison. Do our children deserve to go without a healthy school dinner? How will this benefit the economy and their learning? And we'll start with Sue.
The benefits of free school meals are clear. Pilot areas show that where children are given a free school lunch, they were academically months ahead of their peers elsewhere. And that's why I was delighted that the Liberal Democrats introduced free school meals in September 2014 to infants and to disadvantaged students. We will, as Liberal Democrats, extend the provision of free school meals to all children in primary schools. We do not support Theresa May, the lunch snatcher.
For some children, having a hot school meal is the most nutritional meal that they will have all day. For some children, it is the only meal that they will have all day. 45,000 meals were given out by local Southport Food Bank just last year, and that is an absolute disgrace for our society. We give good food, and hydration will help child development, and I say this as a teacher. They will have better child development both mentally and physically, and they will be able to work better in school and get a better education. Rickets have returned due to the austerity measures that were started by the coalition government and have been carried on by this Conservative government. And it's absolutely appalling that that has happened in 2017. I just can't believe that we have allowed that to happen, and it must stop. So that's why I'm asking for your vote on Thursday.
To keep free school meals. I cannot really understand why they've gone over to the idea of providing breakfast instead of dinners. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me, and I'm all in favour of keeping the dinners.
And Damien?
We're not scrapping free school lunches, we're means testing them. So it's not about getting rid of meals, it's the most disadvantaged children getting 2 free school meals a day rather than 1. Surely for the most disadvantaged children going to school, 2 meals for them are better than 1.
We're going to move on to our next question, which is from Stephen Cooper. If it becomes unavoidable that the UK is going to leave the EU, would you vote for the UK to remain in the single market and/or the customs union? And would you vote to guarantee the rights of EU citizens already resident in the UK to continue to live and work here? Terry?
Just quite an easy one for me, isn't it, really? Would you vote for the UK to remain in the single market? No. Would you vote for the UK to remain in the customs union? No. Would you vote to guarantee the rights of EU citizens already resident in the UK to continue to live and work here? Yes, but it has to be a reciprocal arrangement. They also have to give the rights to our people who are living in Europe to stay there and work there, and you know, it has to be done as a two-way balance, this. We can't say, yes, okay, Europeans can stay in this country if Europe aren't saying the same about our people who are living in Europe.
Damien?
Well, we are going to leave the EU, and that's because people have voted for us to do it. And I would say that we are now going to be in a position 11 days after this general election where one of the leaders of the Labour Party or the Conservative Party will be the Prime Minister that will be going into those talks. I know if Jeremy Corbyn is looking on track to get what he gets, he'll be propped up by Nicola Sturgeon, and I wouldn't be quite sure we'd be leaving at all. I think if Theresa May wins, she will fight and she will get a good deal for this country. And when it comes to EU citizens in this country and ours abroad, I think there will be a very interesting conversation. I will just say I do have lots of friends from across Europe that work here, and the other way around, my grandparents live in Spain, so I don't know quite what would happen there if we decided to shut the borders. I would hope not, is what I would say on that one.
Okay. Sue?
Yes, Liberal Democrats, I would vote to stay in the single market, and I would vote to stay in the customs union.
As Liberal Democrats, we believe that a hard Brexit will be damaging for the economy, for tourism, for students, for inward investment and for growth. But for me, and for the people that I've met on the doorstep during this campaign, one of the most important issues has been the rights of EU citizens. I'm married to Aidan, who's Irish, and that means he's an EU citizen. And right now, having lived in the UK for over 30 years, having started his own business, paid his taxes, married an English girl and raised a family, he's not 100% sure what his position will be post-2019. It's absolutely vital that we guarantee the rights of EU citizens already in the UK. They're working in our NHS, they are our nurses, they're our agricultural workers in this area. It's absolutely vital that they know that they can rely on the UK and their rights here.
It is now unavoidable that the UK is going to leave the EU because both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party respect the right of people to make a democratic decision, and a democratic decision was taken by this government, but not by this government, by the people of this country last year, and we have to respect that. So there is going to be, from Labour, negotiations to keep the single market and to keep the customs union. And it's really, really saddening that friends of mine do not know whether they can stay in this country or not. Labour is going to make sure that they can stay, and they are also going to negotiate that our people can stay in European countries too. Okay, because people's standard of life should not be thrown apart because of the vote last year. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Edward Jones. The leader of the Liberal Democrats says that if he is elected, he will make it perfectly legal to deal in drugs and prostitution. What do you think is the best way of tackling these issues within our communities? Do you want to go first, Sue? Yeah. 5, please.
Can I just say, it's not Liberal Democrat policy to legalise drugs. We are proposing, and it's a manifesto proposal, the legalisation of cannabis. The regulation of cannabis. We're not legalising drugs. The idea is to break up the grip that criminal gangs have on the drug industry in our country. The current policy is not working. It needs to be reviewed. With regulation, we will ensure that the cannabis purchased by people over 18, I might add, is of a better quality than that they are currently getting. It's not mixed with any additional chemicals. We're not looking, I think they call it skunk, we're looking at having a proper regulated market that would take away the money from those gangs of drug dealers, I was going to say. Yeah, I guess that's the question. So that's really, really important. As a regulated substance, we would also tax it. So there would be an income generated into the Treasury. Thirdly, there are currently people with serious medical conditions that rely on cannabis. At this point in time, those people could face criminal action. It is wrong that in a society like our own, people who are found with cannabis face criminal records that impact on their life forever. Canada, a very, very sensible country, a very liberal country, have taken this step. If you look at the benefits that have happened in the States in America, where this policy has also been taken, you will see that they are reporting a reduction in illegal drugs and an increase in income. I think it is a sensible policy at a time when we need to address the criminal gangs.
I do have something of an open mind on this. As someone who's never taken a drug in my life apart from aspirin, I don't really know a lot about them, but I know that there's a lot of drug abuse in this country, and it's not going away, and it's really got to be something that's sorted out. And we do really need to have a stringent review into drug usage. Where we go from that review depends on what the review tells us. But really, I do think some action does need to be taken. So I'm not completely against Sue's leader on this, but I do think it's something that we need to talk about and something we need to make serious decisions on.
And moving on, unless you've finished. Okay, Liz?
Okay, I don't know the Labour Party's position on this, but I certainly know mine because I wrote a 20,000 word dissertation for my degree on drugs. So, drug addiction needs to be treated as a health issue rather than a criminal issue because the war on drugs has failed in this country. So we need stiff penalties for dealers and pushers rather than for the users because they need our help. Often it can be for mental health reasons that they've actually had the addiction. So I would, advocate that we look at actually helping these people. But we do need to legislate against the pushers. We do need stiffer sentences for them. And we need to legalise for medical purposes because it's very difficult to enforce at the moment. But there are people who are really, really struggling out there who could benefit from cannabis. As for prostitution, I haven't got anything in my past about that, I'll just point that out. Protection under law helps protect from some of the vile abuse that girls receive from their pimps. If we look at certain areas where it can be legalised, then we give them more protection. We take away the pimps. That's what needs to happen. By legalising it, you take away the exploitation and the abuse, and you give help to those girls, and you help to bring them out of prostitution. That's what these girls need. They need help and support. They do not need condemnation. They do not need judgment. They need our support. That's my personal view.
Well, I certainly don't want to decriminalise cannabis, and I don't want our economy based on that income that it would generate. I think it's wrong to encourage people to take drugs, and it's absolutely right to encourage them to come off them. I don't think that you deal with drug gangs by legalising it. I think you deal with drug gangs by locking them up, and that's what we should do. And when it comes to prostitution, that is also an important point in terms of the people involved, very vulnerable, getting involved in things like modern slavery, they're abused to an extreme extent. I mean, it's horrible. Being a prostitute should not be a career choice. It should be something we should helping people get out of, and soon.
Just briefly, okay, very briefly.
If we can come back to the question, it says the Liberal Democrats to make it perfectly legal to deal in drugs and prostitution. No, the policy from the Liberal Democrats is to decriminalise the sale and purchase of sex. It's about protecting sex workers' human rights, and it's about focusing police time and resources on those groomed, those forced or trafficked into the sex industry. There is a Merseyside model which has been in operation since 2006. This is Merseyside's police approach to sex work and to sex workers. It's been running in conjunction with other agencies, and it treats crimes against sex workers as hate crimes. Merseyside Police does not prosecute sex workers operating consensually, and it works closely with sex work projects. That's a project that we need to be looking at, and that's what Merseyside Police have been running since 2006.
Any of the other candidates want to respond? Yes.
I'd like to respond on the fact that Sue has actually answered the question twice, that each time you've asked her to be quiet at the end of a question, that at the end of her answer, she's continued. Both Damien and I have been asked to stop, and we stopped. But Sue has not been doing that, and I feel that she's been taking advantage of the chair during this
Would you stop taking advantage of me, please, Sue? Okay. So, anyone else wants to respond to what Sue said? Okay, so let's move on. For the sake of time, I'm going to restrict your answers to 1 minute, okay? Because I'd like us to finish soon, for the sake of everyone, including me. This is from Karen Taylor. Climate change has been caused largely by developed countries. Its impacts are being felt the world over and in the UK, but mostly by the poorest and most vulnerable communities in developing countries. If you are elected as our MP, would you support clean energy generation efforts locally, and would you work to persuade the UK government to honour the Paris Agreement? Damien.
Well, the Prime Minister's been very clear on this. She's already spoken to President Trump and expressed her disappointment with the decision, and it's about persuading people, not bullying them, and that's the right thing to do. We need to make sure that people want to come to the table if we are to tackle this, because it is a global problem. So it's better to say to people that we want you to come back to the table and hopefully get something out of them than it is for countries just to say we're not going to engage in any conversations with you. It's absolutely right that we secure for the future energy, and energy security is a massive problem for this country at the moment, and we should be promoting green energy as part of the energy mix, and in the future a more sustained green energy that would be able to compete with challenges from around the world, where we have situations where we're importing from around the world. Let's be self-sufficient, and let's move forward to be self-sufficient in the future in a sustained way in green energy.
Liz?
I think I answered this quite fully before when we had a question on local energy. But the UK energy system is outdated, it's expensive, and it's polluting. And that's why we need to move to a no-carbon society. So Labour will nationalise energy to deliver renewable and affordable energy and regain democratic control of our energy industry.
Again, I've mentioned a lot of these things already. Renewable energy is absolutely going to be vital moving forward. The gentleman raised some points about the Green Investment Bank. That's something that the Liberal Democrats would restart. Tidal Lagoon, we've already touched on that. I have to say it was Councillor Fred Reevers, Liberal Democrat councillor, who first put that forward, that proposal, and it's Councillor Fred Reevers who's led with the company from Swansea on that. No to fracking, absolutely, it's a backward step. We need to be investing in green economy moving forward. Yes to the Paris Agreement, absolutely vital. And I've got Trump written here, but I just think we'll ignore that, shall we?
And Terry?
Well, we agree that the climate is changing. That's what climates do. But we're not convinced that it's caused by human influence. I thought that might have got some reaction. There are scientists that argue on both sides. There are scientists that argue on both sides. Now, I don't know which of the scientists that are operating on your side or the ones operating on my side. But it was probably the ones operating on your side that said that we should encourage diesel instead of petrol a few years ago. Now that was down to some environmental scientists. I wonder which side of the fence they were on.
Thank you, sir. Let's move on to our next question from Alan Williams. I would like the candidates to tell me what their party's policy is on social care for the elderly, both as care at home and in care homes. And we'll start with Liz.
The Tories have been giving cuts to the rich and to corporations, whilst our elderly and vulnerable are suffering daily. So the Labour Party will lay the foundations of a national care system, which will be integrated with the national health system. But it will be a revitalised national health system, with 8 billion over the course of Parliament going into the funding of the national care system. Did you know that about 1.2 million older people have care needs that are unmet? Did you know that care in the community has become a cover for unseen neglect? We need to increase the carers allowance to help people who are at home, and that's what Labour's going to do. We're going to increase the carers allowance so that carers have a proper wage, and it's going to be increased to the same as JSA, the Job Seekers Allowance.
Thank you, Liz. Damien?
Well, this issue raises the question of the ever-ageing society that we have, and that's a good thing that people are living longer, and how we pay for it if they do need care. There will be an absolute limit on what people will have to pay. People will never have to go below £100,000 of assets. It equalises those that are in residential care. Remember, only £23,000 they can keep at this moment in time, up to £100,000. And it just has got to be a very honest conversation how we do that. Now, when the Green Paper is set out, there'll be more details around it, and I'm sure that the project fear which is running at the moment with some parties will not occur. And we won't take we will not take an lessons from Labour, because when it comes to a lot of their analysis, they've got Diane Abbott doing the figures.
Quiet please.
Government should be absolutely ashamed of social care in this country. I think if we were to combine our NHS with our social care system, then things could improve tremendously. The fact that they're divorced and operated as two entities, it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't add up. And a lot of the problems that we're experiencing in the NHS are throwbacks because the social care system outside is so inadequately funded. Now, I can talk a little bit about this because my mother is, who unfortunately has dementia, she's 96, and she's in a nursing home at the moment, but because my mother and father have worked hard all their lives and managed to save a little bit of money behind them, they have to pay for my mother's nursing home fees. And I think it's absolutely terrible that what those who have to pay for their nursing home fees have to do is to subsidise the nursing home fees that are being paid by others that are put in there by social services. And I really do think we need proper funding of the social care system.
Okay, let's move on. Next question is from Stuart Broughton. Oh, sorry, have I forgotten you, Sue? Sorry. Sue.
One way to cut my time down. Liberal Democrats, we have a proposal, 1p on income tax, raise 6 billion within the first year, to ring fence that for the NHS, adult social care, mental health, public health, has to be addressed. There is a longer term problem though that we as a country need to sit down and to talk about, and that's what we do with the NHS moving forward, and that includes adult social care. Adult social care, public health, mental health, they have to come under closer working arrangements. Adult social care has to be linked to hospital care. We had an issue in Southport with bed blocking over Christmas when the people weren't being able to get the support in their homes to allow them to leave hospital. I know I did a piece in one of the papers where I said about reopening the Old Star convalescent homes so that we would have somewhere that people could move from the hospital into a supported environment where they would get some level of nursing care, where they would get physio, where they would get the support that they needed, but it would be cheaper than the hospital.
Sit down, please, sir. It's 9:30. I've got 3 questions left. Do you want to go through to the bitter end? Yes. Are you guys happy to go through? Final 3 questions? Yeah? Okay. This is from Stuart Broughton. The Prime Minister stated yesterday that she'll no longer tolerate Islamic extremism. What measures do you expect her to take? And we'll start with Terry.
I think in the first instance, and let me say, certainly with regard to all the terrorist incidents that we've experienced in recent months, I think the emergency services, particularly the police, have done an absolutely wonderful job. But there is no doubt about it that the police service in this country, I was going to say police force, but we don't have any forces anymore, they're a police service now, that the police service in this country is so under strength, and I think that's something that we need to immediately address. Now, certainly within UKIP, we would put 12,000 more bobbies back on the beat, And I think this is absolutely essential. I don't agree with that we need a great lot of armed police, but what we do need, as I say, are police on the beat, because it's the police on the beat that are the eyes and ears of our society. They're the ones that can pick up what's going on in the various neighbourhoods.
That's time, Terry.
Is that me?
So, yeah.
Okay. Just picking up on Terry's point, I do think that we owe the emergency services a huge debt of gratitude for the work that they've done. They've gone into places immediately after these attacks, and it's been horrendous. Make no mistake, these attacks are a direct attack on our democracy and our liberty, and our response needs to be measured, considered, and must bring all communities together. I think that we need to address this in two ways. With early intervention, we need to look at a full review or scrapping of the current government programme of Prevent. We need to look at working at the community level to identify vulnerable individuals and then working with their communities to ensure that they don't become radicalised. Secondly, we need to fund our intelligence and emergency services properly. They're doing an incredible job that we've said, but we need to give them the resources to allow them to go into the communities and to work with them, but also to monitor.
Sorry, Sue.
I've stopped.
Okay. Liz?
Thank you, Sue. Any response on counter-terrorism needs to be proportionate. And it needs, because it's an attack on our democracy. And what we don't want to do is to take initiatives that are actually going to undermine our democracy for people who are going about their legitimate business. So I believe that we need a full independent investigation into MI5 and the other security services to see just what they knew and what they know about the people that are in our country. We need to expect an increase in policing budget, which Labour will do, because we've actually lost 20,000 police since 2010. And that's why we can't respond as well when we're told that there's an extremist operating in our community. There is not the resources to monitor them at the moment. And we need specialist training for officers who are investigating suspects. So we can't get all of those 20,000 police straight back on the streets, because it's going to take time to train.
Damien?
First and foremost, we continue to defend British values and do not allow them to take those away from us. That we deprive extremists of safe spaces on the internet, that we tackle extremism in communities, and that we do continue to increase counter-terrorism measures through the increased spending on counter-terrorism budget.
Okay, thank you. Our last two questions are of a more general nature and are designed to help us hear a little bit more about the candidates themselves. So this one is from someone who just calls himself Steve. What have you done for the residents of Southport since the last general election? Maybe just bullet points, please, candidates. Okay, we'll start with you, Liz.
Okay. Well, during the last election, I helped save the Brookdale Daycare Centre by working with Sefton Council. But since then, I've been politically restricted because I was the Deputy Mayor and then the Mayor of West Lancashire. So during those 2 years, I wasn't able to be political. However, within that role, I was invited to KGV to help open the drama facilities after robustly defending KGV. I've opened my own business in Southport. I've had a strong charity committee that raised over 11,000 for the local neonatal unit, and I've been involved in a campaign to give people courage to report domestic violence, which was recently ridiculed by Sefton Conservatives.
Thank you.
Okay. 2015, Christmas, got free parking for Southport residents and visitors to support our traders. I've collected over 300 bags of litter with Rubbish Friends, cleaning up grot spots across Southport. I've worked with my colleague Councillor Pat Keith to create dementia-friendly areas, dementia-friendly services in both Marshside and Churchtown at this point. I've campaigned with Liberal Democrats and with John Pugh against the closure of the A&E in Southport Hospital. I've planted flowers on Lord Street with Lord Street in bloom. I've worked with Southport Bid and with club owners in Southport so that security door staff have cameras so that they can actually film and make any incidents, and working to make Southport nighttime economy safer. I've been speaking and working with residents.
Damien.
Well, I've continued my links with people in Southport, with colleagues in Southport, and basically there's a long list of things that still need to be done after the last election, so I would hopefully work with them to get those done after this election.
So you've done nothing.
And Terry.
Yeah, I've been involved in the Rotten Row project, planting the flowers in Rotten Row. I'm involved in the North West in Bloom Committee. I've got new premises to open a Birkdale library that we're working on alongside Birkdale Railway Station. I'm involved with the Southport Talking newspaper for the blind. I'm involved in Opsta, trying to improve the railway line to Manchester. I run a lunch and leisure club in Ainsdale when I take lunches out to the housebound. I'm on committees at the hospital, and I'm involved in Birkdale Civic Society, planting flowers in Birkdale Village and Birkdale Railway Station. Have I got time to carry on?
You've got 2 seconds, quick.
Oh right, I can't say anything.
Okay, great. And our final question from John Hayward. Some of you may identify with this. I have been a Conservative supporter and voter for 50 years. However, after the lies and exaggerations of the EU referendum campaign and the lamentable performance of the current government, I don't feel I can vote Conservative again. With Jeremy Corbyn, Diane Abbott and Len McCluskey running the Labour Party, I can't vote for them. After the woeful performance of the Liberal Democrats and Coalition, I can't vote for them. And UKIP are just leaderless and directionless. And he finishes, what should I do on Thursday? Liz.
Well, firstly, rest assured that it's Jeremy Corbyn that's running the Labour Party, not Diane Abbott and not Len McCluskey. If you want Southport to lose its hospital, then don't vote for me. If you want a fairer society, then vote for me. If you want someone who you can come to when you might be at the lowest ebb in your life, then vote for me. I am approachable. You can come and see me if I become your MP. It would be me that you would be voting for if you vote for here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say that nobody could ever say UKIP was directionless? I mean, we'll accept a lot of criticism over a lot of things, but the fact that every time I've opened my mouth tonight there have been constant boos throughout the audience, I mean, you obviously know what I'm going to say, and I can't say, we're certainly not directionless. You know where we're going. But I would say if you're not sure of who to vote for in this election, go with your heart. Don't go with your head. Go with your heart.
Thank you. Sue?
I mean, it's a great question. I would like to come back on the point you raised about the Liberal Democrats in Coalition. In Coalition, yeah, we made some mistakes and we paid the price. But we did achieve a number of key things. We raised the threshold on a personal income tax. We created the Green Investment Bank. We introduced the pupil premium. We introduced same-sex marriage. None of those were in the Conservative manifesto in 2010, and the Liberal Democrats delivered those, including free school lunches.
If you can't decide on which party to vote for,
then you should vote for the person that will best represent our Southport, our town. Someone who lives here, has raised a family here, has been in the community here, has been a councillor here. Somebody with a track record of delivering for the residents of Southport and for our town. Someone who has a voice locally and will have a voice nationally.
Well, the first thing I'd say is that I think it was the different sides of the EU campaign that were actually running those campaigns. So it was those that were responsible, not the Conservative Party, if there's certain accusations that were made on that. And when it comes to the others, I mean, UKIP basically, are leaderless because Nigel Farage, in respect to him, was a good leader of their party. That's politics, Terry. So you've got a choice. You can either vote Conservative and get a strong Brexit deal, or vote for any of the others and potentially go into the coalition of chaos which will destroy this country.
That was our final question. Thank you for staying so long. Could I ask you to give a round of applause for our candidates? Thank them. And may I wish you a safe journey and hope that your car hasn't got a parking ticket.